From KUOW in Seattle, welcome to Soundside. I'm Libby Dankman. Go Mariners. Coming up on the show today, thousands of Starbucks layoffs and hundreds of store closures. How CEO Brian Niccol plans to bring back the cafe culture of the iconic brand with a leaner corporate workforce. How employees and the union are dealing with the fallout, and what to expect from your local store. That's coming up later this hour. But first, Israelis commemorated the October 7th attacks yesterday with quiet gatherings. Official remembrances for victims of the massacres has been delayed until after the high holiday season. It's been 2 years since Hamas and other Palestinian militant groups attacked Israel, killing over 1,000 people. Yesterday, we heard about how the events of October 7th have impacted Israeli culture and politics, and we discussed the new pressure for a ceasefire deal with talks commencing in Egypt this week. The country's ensuing war against Hamas has killed more than 67,000 Palestinians and destroyed much of Gaza's infrastructure. A growing number of international experts have labeled Israel's military campaign a genocide. It's a charge Israel vehemently denies, and one that continues to bring scrutiny and widespread criticism from across the world. In our corner of this country, there has been a surge in pro-Palestinian activism. For instance, Sabrina O'Day works at the Council on American Islamic Relations. CARE advocates for Muslim Americans. O'Day works in its Washington office. After October 7th, she felt the need to advocate more for the Palestinian community in Washington and in Gaza. It's a need that feels deeply personal.
For me, my dad used to say this all the time. He's done a lot of activism for Palestine over the last 30 plus years here in the Northwest. And he would always say that it was a form of therapy for him. Like it was how he would process not being home with our family and not being able to advocate for Palestine from within. And that is how I felt the last 2 years. Like if I wasn't doing all of the things that I'm doing, I would be at home just in shambles.
That activism takes many forms, teaching cultural activities like Palestinian cross-stitching. She's organized festivals and met with politicians. Sabrine and other local Palestinians also started a nonprofit called Beledna.
The main goal for Beledna is to advocate for Palestine, Palestinians in diaspora, to unify the Palestinian community here in Washington, so that there is a hub for information, a connection point. Not that we do everything here for Palestine, but we're trying to build connection so that we can be an easy kind of one-stop shop for folks to get information and get connected to Palestinian orgs that are doing the work here in Washington State.
Another activist from our region has recently made national headlines. Orcas Island's Jasmine Ikeda joined the Global Samud Flotilla. That's a fleet of boats that was carrying a small amount of humanitarian aid to Gaza. Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg was also on board. Israeli authorities intercepted the flotilla and detained Ikeda and hundreds of other members. Here's Ikeda's friend and fellow organizer, Brooke Budner.
I mean, we've done so much work, from organizing our county to pass a ceasefire resolution, to advocating directly with our senators and congresspeople, to fundraising mutual aid campaigns, to educational events, to rallies. And nothing really has felt like it has changed the U.S.'s approach to its foreign policy to Israel, which is really just this wholesale support of what Israel's doing, no matter how brutal their actions become.
Budner says Ikeda joined the flotilla because she wanted to do more.
I think that for Jazz, she saw this opportunity that really uniquely fit her skill set and her ability, her time in her life to join. And she saw it as an opportunity to do something that could really raise the temperature around this issue in a way that some of our other organizing just has not fully been able to do.
Ikeda was released yesterday. 170 activists from various countries were deported to Greece and Slovakia, according to Israel's foreign minister. We're going to focus now on the vocal protests that have been happening within one of the Seattle area's biggest industries. Groups of tech workers at various companies have campaigned to end their employers' relationships with the Israeli government. One such group, called No Azure for Apartheid, has occupied the Microsoft campus in Redmond and disrupted corporate events. Last month, Microsoft cut off Azure Cloud and AI services to an Israeli intelligence unit, part of the IDF. The company said earlier this year that it had found no evidence Israel used its technology to target or harm people in Gaza. But a Guardian investigation published in August reported that Israel's intelligence agency was using Microsoft's cloud and AI tools to collect and analyze millions of cell phone calls made across Gaza. That reporting and pressure from protests over the mass surveillance of Palestinians appeared to prompt Microsoft to launch a new review and change course. Hossam Nasr is a former Microsoft employee and one of the organizers for the protest group No Azure for Apartheid. Hossam, thanks for coming in studio and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
So how did you get involved in this movement?
So very shortly after October 7, it became clear to me that if there is ever a time to use my privilege, whether it's the privilege of simply being in this country, working for a company as big as Microsoft or anything else, it's now, right? So I set out to see all the ways that I can do to stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people and fight against this genocide in whatever way that I could, including in the workplace. So very quickly, I started getting involved in workplace organizing, especially in response to the company's response to the events of October 7. The first thing they did is they sent a mass email to employees saying, "We stand with Israel." They had a banner on their donations page that says, "We stand with Israel," with an Israeli flag, encouraging people to donate there. And myself and many other Palestinian, Arab, Muslim employees felt completely excluded. And for weeks and months and after that, there was absolutely no mention of Palestinian employees. So myself and many other workers who felt similarly started getting together. We started organizing. And at first, it was simply writing emails to executives, asking them to acknowledge the humanity of the Palestinian people in the same way they did for Israelis, asking them to also put on their webpage to donate to Gaza, and starting a petition to call for a ceasefire, very simple acts like that. But I think very quickly I realized, and many other workers realized, two very important things. One is that it's not enough for us to simply appeal to the humanity of executives because they simply do not care. We have to be pressuring them. And that pressure should come both internally and externally. And secondly, it's really important for us to focus frankly, less on the rhetoric of what executives say and more on the actual business practices on the ground of how our labor is being used to fuel this genocide, which was an even bigger taboo subject in the company. You can talk about what the statement says or doesn't say, but the minute you touch what does our office in Israel do? In what ways are we funding and or enabling this genocide, the world's first AI-assisted genocide? That was a red line. So that's how I felt, and I found other workers who felt the same. And then very quickly, we got connected with workers and organizers from No Tech for Apartheid, the group that existed before us, fighting against Google and Amazon's Project Nimbus, the $1.2 billion contract with the Israeli government. And from there, we were able to start organizing with them. At first, we organized under the umbrella of No Tech for Apartheid until in May of last year, we formally launched our campaign, No Azure for Apartheid, with our petition, our demands, and our website.
So what are the demands? Let's get specific about those. What are you looking for in terms of things that you want Microsoft to change about the services it offers and provides to Israel and the military?
Yeah, great. So going back to the demands, we have four main demands. The first one, and that's the most important one, is IOF off Azure, IOF being the Israeli Occupation Forces. Azure is the Microsoft cloud. So basically, our demand is that we Microsoft to stop selling any and all Azure services to any Israeli government or military entity. And I think that is, again, a pretty low bar considering how, in previous cases, they've divested from the entire economy. Two is to disclose all the ties that Microsoft has with those entities, with Israeli government entities, military, weapons manufacturers. There's a lot of pretty much every single detail we know about those partnerships has not been because Microsoft is being transparent, but it's been because of investigative journalism, including leaks from both the Israeli side and Microsoft side. We're asking Microsoft to just be upfront and be transparent about those relationships and how they're being used. Third, is to join the global call for a ceasefire. And lastly, is to end the discrimination against Palestinian, Arab, and Muslim workers, something that unfortunately we've all experienced, including myself being eventually fired from the company. So those are our 4 demands.
Okay, I want to talk to you about one of your group's demands. Microsoft said in May that their cloud computing and AI tools were not being used by Israel for violence in Gaza. The company said it found no evidence of this in an internal investigation. Over the summer, there was this other report in The Guardian, and it was a joint investigation with Israel and Palestinian journalists. And this reporting detailed how the company's cloud computing service were being used by the Israel Ministry of Defense to surveil people in Gaza. Microsoft then confirmed parts of this reporting and informed Israel's defense ministry of Microsoft's decision to cease and disable, I'm reading from a statement, to cease and disable specified IMOD subscriptions and their services, including their use of specific cloud storage and AI services and technologies. So this seems to be, I don't want to say a win. I think maybe that oversimplifies it. But it seems to be that the reporting and your activism has shifted the company's stance, at least in this one instance. This is the end of one specific set of services for one agency within the IDF. What do you make of this move by Microsoft?
I think it is a win. And I think we shouldn't downplay that, because I think especially in this context, because of all the things you said, because of the context of this country, because of the context of any U.S. company, especially tech companies right now, for us as a movement to be able to claw back some sense of morality from those companies right now is really significant and frankly unprecedented. This is the first U.S. company since the genocide, it's the first U.S. tech company to withdraw some of its services to the Israeli military. That's very significant. But also, I want to be clear about what got us here, right? Like you mentioned how the first investigation they did in May, they said they found no evidence of wrongdoing. It was done by the same firm, right? You're not going to find evidence of wrongdoing if you're not looking. And frankly, the reporting of The Guardian is not new. I mean, it's more specific, and it provides like even more egregious details of what's going on. But the fact that Microsoft storage is being used to store surveillance data has been known and reported on since February. The fact that they're using AI to facilitate the targeting, the transcription, the translation, the fact that Microsoft houses the target bank or works with the unit that houses the target bank and the population registry, all of those details have been reported on since January and February. So I think what actually happened here is that our organizing has been relentless. And one response they actually had before the May announcement was one that was more hidden, which is silencing and ignoring us for over a year. We have been organizing internally and externally, publicly, protesting at Microsoft events, and so many other hidden work that is happening within the company to pressure the executives for over a year. And they have just been completely silent. They have been deleting questions, closing down forums, canceling town halls, all these things. It got to the point where they couldn't ignore us anymore. And they came up with the first statement thinking that maybe it can sap the energy of our organizing, thinking that it might be sufficient to say, don't worry, guys, we're good. And when obviously that didn't happen, I think with the new story, they saw an opportunity to try to give us like an actual concession, hoping that our organizing is going to stop. And I think, again, it's significant. But we should be clear about what it's not, right? This is not our demands being fulfilled. This is not the end of our organizing, because it really shouldn't be really controversial to say that if you are providing any sort of technology to a military that is committing genocide, like unequivocally, and you know that, and you know what they use technology for, and you know that like you are partnering with specific naval, ground, and air units that are not mentioned in this report that are committing this genocide on the ground, there is no moral, ethical, or legal way to be doing that kind of business. And the attempt to try to isolate, like, only, to use his words, specific storage services, specific AI services only to one unit, which is unit 8200, is simply not sufficient. And it's really important to make that clear, that yes, it's an important win, but we cannot settle for crumbs when lives are on the line.
I'm speaking with Hossam Nasr. He's a former Microsoft employee who organizes with No Azure for Apartheid. Microsoft said in a statement about Nasr's firing that, quote, "We are committed to maintaining a safe and secure campus environment for all employees, and conduct that violates our established company policies or our code of conduct is unacceptable." I'm going to continue my conversation with Hossam Nasr after the break here on KUOW. You're listening to Soundside. I'm Libby Dankman. We're continuing my conversation with Hossam Nasr of No Azure for Apartheid. That's a group of Microsoft employees and former employees who are protesting the company's business contracts with Israel. Microsoft last month ended some contracts with an agency within Israel's Ministry of Defense. This was an intelligence agency that had been using reportedly cloud computing and AI services to gather and process phone calls from across Gaza. This was first reported in The Guardian. No Azure for Apartheid has additional demands for Microsoft, like calling for a ceasefire and disclosing all ties to the Israeli government. Here's more of my conversation with Hossam Nasr. Hossam, you are from Egypt.
Yes.
You went to school in the United States, a little school in Boston called Harvard. And then you got a job at a big tech company. For a lot of people, that's the American dream.
Yeah.
You then got fired by Microsoft after you were under investigation by HR for many months. It was a personal risk, and still is a personal risk, to protest, both because of the risk to your employment, but also we've seen in recent months people on green cards, people on student visas, people being targeted for their speech. And there's a very real chance that somebody like you who speaks up about Palestinian rights would get the attention of the State Department, and you've got, a review of your immigration status and you're out of the country. Why do you do this?
Yeah. And by the way, just really small piece to add to that, Microsoft would also be complicit in that, because I don't know if you saw the reporting where they reached out to the FBI in May about our organizing and mentioned me by name as like a person of interest or something, asking the FBI for more information about our protest. So if
we'll be following up and asking Microsoft about this as well. Yeah,
that one they might have more comment on. They really don't like the fact that that's happened, but it did, and you can see it for yourself. But I think so if there is a federal agency that does take interest in me, I would partially blame Microsoft for that. But to answer your question, I came into this country and I felt two things at once. I felt, on the one hand, an extreme sense of responsibility that comes with the privilege that I have. Like you said, like going to a school like Harvard and having that name, or even just being in this country, like being in the belly of the beast. And recognizing very quickly, unfortunately, like how complicit this country is, and me being here is in contributing to the apartheid in Palestine. I felt the responsibility to speak up, to do something about it, to do whatever I can to organize. But I was also always very conscious of, I don't want to throw away that privilege by just like getting myself deported, getting myself expelled, getting myself fired, right? So I was always trying to strike that balance, and believe it or not, I was always trying to like do whatever I can, kind of in the shadows, and let other people who have a safer immigration status speak up. But October 7 and the genocide, for me, changed that entire calculation. It changed everything. And maybe just to go on a little bit of like a personal digression here really quick, but one thing that is somewhat frustrating sometimes, and it's important for me to note, is how now, 2 full years into this genocide, finally, some Western leaders, some Western politicians are starting to acknowledge the fact that it's a genocide, are starting to say like, oh, well, now we realize that how bad it is, or now we realize that it's a genocide. But we been knew, like, this is not something that is surprising. very early on in October 2023, we were saying this is a genocide. We were saying, listen to the words of the Israeli leaders themselves. The case by South Africa that was filed in the ICJ was in December. And even then, it felt like it was too late. No one ever thought that it would last this long before people begin to acknowledge basically what our eyes and ears have been telling us all along. So I realized the stakes of the moment from the very, very beginning. I realized that my people were being genocided. And my thought at the time was, if there was ever a time that I was saving my privilege for, if there was ever a time where I was holding on to this card of potentially being fired or deported or anything like that, like, what am I saving it for if it's not now? This is the biggest existential threat that my people are facing, probably that I'll ever witness in my lifetime. So I'm not gonna withhold anything. I'm not going to keep away anything that I can use, whatever I can, whatever context I find myself, to do whatever I can to stop the genocide. And I'm just one person, and I don't have that much power at all. But I was like, if there's a modicum of power I have, I'll have to use it.
I mean, you did something. Like, to me, it seems clear that activism by current and former employees like yourself was a part 100%. Of Microsoft's calculation here in taking the Guardian reporting seriously and then taking action. When it comes to the tech industry as a whole, there have been movements, No Tech for Apartheid, which your group is a part of. No Azure for Apartheid is connected to No Tech for Apartheid. At Google, they fired 50 employees who protested the cloud computing contracts with Israel. An employee at Amazon claimed that he was fired for activism there. We are seeing this activism, even though I would say the job market is much more weighted in favor of the employer right now, whereas 5 years ago, for example, it was like talent was getting snapped up. It was really easy to get a job. It's no longer the case in the tech industry. Do you worry that the economic situation with AI replacing jobs, with the kind of changing in hiring and everything like that people could be increasingly afraid to speak out because of their employment situation?
I think it's possible, but frankly, I don't think we've seen evidence of that. I think we've seen evidence of the opposite. And what I think is actually happening in this moment is, when you look at the tech industry as a whole, I was talking to a friend the other day, and they told me, like, oh, what was it like working at Microsoft? I'm assuming everyone there is right-wing. Just because they see, or working in the tech industry, like, I'm assuming everyone who works in tech is right-wing, just seeing what's going on and how these tech companies are behaving. And no, that's not true. But what we are seeing is an industry that was at some point founded on the promise of, we're going to make the world a better place. We're going to democratize information. We're going to democratize the world, like this. We're going to give access to people that never had access before. Microsoft's slogan was, we're going to have a PC in every home and every office, right? Like that, there was so much optimism and good in the promise of the tech industry, believe it or not. And contrast that with where we see the tech industry today, that has just slipped into, has unapologetically embraced the worst humanity has to offer. Fascism, authoritarianism, censorship, genocide. And I think what we're seeing now is that people who joined the industry with that promise, with that hope, feeling like, sure, maybe this is not the perfect company, but I feel like I can do good here. I feel like I can actually make a positive contribution to humanity. And there's a lot of people who joined that way. I was one of them, and I'm not the only one. And they're just seeing where it is now, and they simply don't want to be part of it anymore. And I think it comes to a point where, if this is what the industry is going to look like, if this is what my company is going to look like, I don't care if they fire me, because I don't want to work for a company like that anymore. So it's either that I change it or I leave. And I think that's a decision that more and more people are making, including at Microsoft. Like, one of the things that I think also contributed to this, in addition to the organizing that we do, is just like a wave of mass, high profile resignations. Some are louder than others. Some people go and they send a mass email and they post on LinkedIn, and others just simply talk to their team and make it clear what their reason was. But I have seen there has not been like since this started, I've not stopped hearing about people who continue to quit their job, even if they have nothing lined up, even if they don't know what they're doing next, because they simply cannot bear the weight of working for a company that's using their labor to fund and fuel a genocide.
I'm speaking with Hossam Nasr, one of the organizers for No Azure for Apartheid. He's a former Microsoft employee. He was fired. When was it this year that you were fired?
It was actually almost exactly a year ago.
Almost
so
exactly a year ago.
Yeah.
Not all of your demands have been met, but we have seen a shift in Microsoft's policies, specifically with certain services related to the Israel Ministry of Defense. What's next for the movement? What are you hoping for? What are your next goals?
Yeah, I think that's a really important question, because I think for us, it's really important to contextualize, like to your point, it's very rare, honestly, in this movement, in this country specifically, to have a win, and to feel like it's very easy sometimes to feel like you're talking to a void, and to feel gaslit by society and by the people in power, and that you're powerless. And I think that this win, although small, although like you said, all demands are not met, is proof to us, is motivation, is vindication for us that we are not powerless, we are not helpless. Our organizing does work. And when we get together, even though we're not like a mass group of the workers, we're not like a formal union, for example, that can go on strike or anything like that. But even still, our collective power, getting together, being consistent, having this kind of sustained pressure, sustained organizing, does work. And we have proof of that now. It's no longer theoretical. So we really hope that, like for us, this is motivation to keep going. This is motivation to just keep doing what we're doing, continue the organizing, continue the pressure. I do believe this is just a crack in the dam, and the flood will follow. And I think that I'm really encouraged, actually, by the fact that Microsoft itself says that the investigation is ongoing, and this is only like their first measure to take while they continue investigating. I'm actually encouraged by that. And I'm encouraged that I am optimistic that maybe actually we will live in a world in which our demands are met not too long from now. And I also hope that this is motivation and encouragement for other worker organizing movements broadly. We talked about the tech industry before. The reporting recently also said how after Microsoft cut Unit 8200's access to some storage, they moved 8,000 terabytes of data to Amazon servers, to AWS. And yes, that's a win for us, but also doesn't really materially affect the conditions in Palestine as much as we would want. So then we want to partner with Amazon workers and Google workers, No Tech for Apartheid, and the entire industry. And it's not just tech workers. Obviously, there is really brave, heroic stances are being taken by labor movements around the world. The dock workers in Morocco and Spain and Italy that are forcing ships to turn around and not deliver weapons to Israel.
And you see yourself in coalition with those types of labor movements.
100%. I think we are a labor movement, and I think we are collectively, we have the same goal.
Hossam Nasr is one of the organizers of No Azure for Apartheid and a former Microsoft employee. Thank you very much, Hossam.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're listening to Soundside. I'm Libby Dankman. We did reach out to Microsoft about Hossam's claims that Microsoft contacted the FBI about monitoring activists and mentioned Hossam's name specifically. This fact was verified by reporters at Bloomberg who saw correspondence between the company's director of investigations and the FBI. Microsoft representatives told us the company regularly reaches out to law enforcement in advance of events looking for insight into similar protests. Thanks for listening to Soundside. This show is only possible because listeners support us. If you're able to give right now, please check out the show notes for a link to donate. And don't forget, you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 FM Seattle at noon and 8 p.m., Monday through Thursday, or anytime online at KUOW.org.